There's a meme that pops up on the phone once in a while, and the premise is expectations versus reality. And one specific meme has the setup, expectations at the Great Wall of China. And you see a sun-drenched valley with the wall and a complete lack of people, versus the reality, and here's a photo of hundreds of people at the wall, shoulder to shoulder. Now, if you compare that photo with one that I took when I visited the wall, there's a definite similarity. So, is that meme true? Well, yes, but with an asterisk. One of the translators on my first trip to China described crowds as the mountain of people, which I thought was a clever turn of phrase to describe what it's like to be around a lot of people most of the time. So, on the one hand, when you look at that meme, you could say it's just a joke, it means nothing. But on the other hand, if you wanted to critique it in a harsher light, you could say, you're planning to visit the most famous tourist attraction in the most populated country in the world, and your expectation is no crowds? Really? No crowds? To quote Orson Welles, that's just idiotic, if you'll forgive me by saying so. Having said that, it is relatively easy to avoid huge crowds at the wall, if that's your concern. That's what I mean by saying there's an asterisk. No one can guarantee no crowds, but if you do some research and plan your visit, you could at least mitigate the issue of crowds. There are multiple sections of the wall that you can go to, each with their own pros and cons. There's the Jiankou section, which is about 3 hours from Beijing, very remote, and it's considered a real challenge for hikers. Then there's the Badaling section, which is only 90 minutes northwest of Beijing, and one of the most tourist-friendly and therefore busiest sections of the wall. Every guidebook says to avoid Badaling on a Sunday. I visited Badaling on a Sunday, and it was amazing. The crowds didn't matter at all. It was on the last day of my first trip. My employer had booked me on a day trip to the wall at his own expense, which was very nice of him to do. Everyone on the tour bus was Chinese. The tour guide spoke no English. I don't know what my employer said to her ahead of time about me. I don't know what anyone on the bus was thinking of me. Maybe they thought I booked the wrong tour. I don't know. They took roll call every time we made a stop. And I didn't even recognize my own name when it was being called out in Chinese. It didn't sound anything like Joe. Might not even have been my name for all I know. Ignorant foreigner? Right here. I was only told to follow the tour guide's flag, which was a red fish. Follow the red fish, that's all I knew. Our first stop was the Ming Dynasty tombs, which I didn't know existed until that morning. This is a huge archaeological site where 13 of the Ming emperors are laid to rest. I saw an actual Ming vase, which was cool, and then we visited the underground tomb of one of the emperors. After that, we stopped for lunch, and my anticipation for seeing the wall was building. At this point, what I didn't expect was to make a connection with people on the bus. It was all nonverbal, but some of them made gestures of friendship. One offered an apple, another some dried fruit. It's like they were checking in on me to make sure I was all right, which was a nice feeling. At lunch, they gave me a fork to use. This is one of those things you might expect if you go to China. You go to a restaurant, they give you a fork because they assume you can't use chopsticks. I didn't need the fork, but it was still a nice gesture. So we finished lunch and finally made our way to Badaling. After some hand signals with the tour guide to confirm that 3 p.m. was the departure time, I got on a fairly fast-moving cable car. From the cable car, it's down a tunnel, then a couple of right turns, and then I'm there. I'm on the Great Wall. And because you don't know what else to do, I'm following everyone else, you just start climbing. In my head, at this instant, I'm thinking, I'm climbing the Great Wall. This is awesome. And it is a climb, let me tell you. It gets fairly steep in some sections. The height of the steps keeps changing. Some are 1 brick in height, some are 4 bricks in height. There are some steep, flat sections as well. And you do have to watch your step. It's easy to get tripped up if you're not careful. So I got to the first tower, and it was shoulder to shoulder, tons of people. There was a security guard with a megaphone, I assume telling people to keep moving. I know because he was saying it right in my ear. So from the top of this first peak, there's this 300-degree turn back down the mountain, and that's when the crowds start to become a bit more sparse. It was a real privilege being there, not just to appreciate this amazing achievement and the history, but just to walk the wall. I would come to the crest of a hill, and the whole valley and the wall was laid out in front of me. It was beautiful, it was humbling, it was really an amazing day. And as far as the crowds were concerned, clearly I didn't care. As I said earlier, you can plan your trip to the wall to avoid crowds, maybe. But I would say if you go to China and you don't experience the mountain of people at least once, I'd question whether you experienced China at all. Well, that's it for now. Subscribe to the channel if you dare. Until next time.